You walk through a storm, hold your head up high, and don't be afraid of the dark.
You've lost that driving feeling. Oh, that driving feeling.
Christiancockeyed Radio Show.
I say this calls for action, and now, nip it in the bud. Nip it in the bud. You got to nip it in the bud.
Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone.
Just because you have to do it by yourself doesn't mean you have to do it alone. Yes. Listen to that carefully. Just because you have to do it by yourself doesn't mean you have to do it all alone. Well, years ago, NAPA Auto Parts, they used that slogan. You kind of like that, don't you, Bob?
That's lovely. I love that. It's it rang so true to my ears this morning when I heard it for the very first time.
Just because you have to do it by yourself doesn't mean you have to do it alone, as we were mentioning. That was the NAPA Auto Parts slogan, because they were trying to show you that they could father you through a car repair as a big part of what NAPA know-how, is all about. Not that this is an advertising for NAPA, but the concept is there. There's nothing like feeling helpless under the hood with no clue why your car won't start or it's overheating, alone, and you think, wow, I don't know if anybody can help me with this one. Not true. A lie straight from hell. How easily, right? I buy into that myself. Someone knows what's wrong and can and will help you. So maybe you feel all alone this morning. Hey, we're here to help. If we can, there's thousands, and I mean thousands of other car folks listening as well. So if Bob and I don't have the answer, we would love for you to call and test the knowledge of all our listeners. 866-348-7884 is the number to call in.
It surprised me through the years how many times you and I were stumped, and we got a call, and somebody knew exactly, and it had the exact same problem and shined a lot of light on it for somebody. So,
and this is how much we're not alone, Bob. I mean,
there you go. There you go.
And thousands of people. So call us with your poser. What is it that you think, wow, I don't know if anybody can help me? 866-348-7884. Well, asking for help, admitting I can't go it alone. Well, lots of wounds, pride, fear. There's messiness all over the place in that. And actually later today on the Masculine Journey radio show, which I recorded earlier in the week, we talked about that's an orphan spirit, that we think we're in this by ourselves. So God kind of had me on this lesson plan all week long. And last night, my wife and I went to see I Can Only Imagine, which is a phenomenal movie about Bart Millard, Mercy Me's lead singer, and the song, I Can Only Imagine. I imagine you've heard it. And the story behind the song is what that movie's about. Well, here's a spoiler alert. Bart writes the song, I Can Only Imagine, if you hadn't guessed that already. But a unique part of the movie was that Bart's journal was from way back when he was 10 years old. He kept a journal because he went to a Christian camp. And at that Christian camp, they had him write a journal. Well, a big part of him writing that song were entries from that journal when he was 10 years old.
Wow.
And so here he had proof, if you think about it, that he wasn't alone, even back when he was 10 years old. And he had it was a written record. Bart wasn't alone, and as a result of that, if you think about it, I mean, millions of lives were changed with this simple little phrase that was written in the journal of a 10-year-old boy, I can only imagine. I mean, think about it. But there was a written record that Bart wasn't alone. And so a minute ago, Bob was watching me go crazy to try to find this journal of mine because I have recovered it, my very first journal. After I watched the movie last night, I went and got this.
It tickled me that other people lose stuff. I'm constantly losing everything or temporarily misplacing stuff.
Yeah, so I thought I'd misplace this for a minute. It's kind of important because it is my first journal. And I started writing in this, Bob, when I was 39 years old. And
just yesterday.
Yeah, it was, I guess, 23 years ago. It was a while. But if you're watching us on Facebook, we stream in live. Here's the journal. This is it. And when you look at this very first entry, the very first thing that God gave me to tell me on the night of July 25th, right, 1995, in prayer, God asked me to write down my views on my relationship with the Lord day by day. Now, it doesn't say this in the entry, but I know I was on an airplane. I was praying in the middle of the night. I was on my way to Denmark. And I was praying, and God showed up, and he gave me that. And he said, I want you to write these adventures day by day of your life, and here's a written record right now. We're talking about not being alone. And So I'd looked at this movie last night. You can only imagine Tammy and I absolutely loved it. I can't tell you how much I think you ought to go watch that movie. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. But as I'm looking through my journal, I realized by the dates of the journal almost immediately, like, wow, I started writing this journal in July of 1995. Well, I was diagnosed with cancer in April of 1996. So I realized quickly that, wow, this is going to have those entries. So I went and I started to look at these things. And you know what I found out? I had totally forgotten what had happened. There were things in here that I had just completely lost out of my mind. And you know what I was thinking? The enemy has come to steal. And you have memories where God showed up and did something amazing for you, and you don't have it if you don't have your journal. Well, if I had my journal, which I have it right here, I want to read this. This is from April 16th, 1996. Actually, it was when I knew I had cancer, but I didn't know how bad. All right, so here's the entry. It says, thank you, Jesus, for the spiritual battle I've experienced since Friday night. Sunday night, while under attack, I prayed for Jesus to help me in the middle of my night fear. Well, you remember at the beginning of that song a little while ago, it talked about when you're in the dark. Well, I've always been afraid of the dark. My wife would tell you that. And you see, there's my journal entry, still struggling with that fear of the dark. And actually, night terror may have been a better way to describe what I was feeling that night. And here it says, check this out, Bob. It says, over there on the pillow, there was a check. And amazingly, immediately, I knew what it meant. Thank you, Jesus, for showing me you had paid for me, and I am yours. Thank you, Jesus. Now, that was April 16th. April 18th, and you can see this right here in the journal, Bob, because you're looking at it, or the people on Facebook, it says, wow, I'm in serious trouble by physical standards. Thank you. You know, I've got angiocentric T-cell lymphoma, which appears to be a very deadly disease. I mean, that was in just a few hours of me writing the other thing. I'm writing this. And I'd totally forgotten about this check, Bob. The reason why I bring that out this morning is I go, wait a minute. This has been clearly stolen from me, such a precious, precious memory. Had it not been written down, it wouldn't be there. And so the point of that is, and you're going to wonder, Robbie, how does that get to cars? Well, here's the thing. I have known over the years that people that keep good maintenance records. Now, this isn't clear to what I'm describing here, but I'm just telling you that when you have a record of what's done to your car, it's phenomenally helpful if you ever go to sell the car or you're trying to track what's happened. I've forgotten, when's the last time I had my brakes done? When's the last time I changed the oil? Have I changed the timing belt? All those things are written records, Bob.
That's something I've always been deficient in that, and it was something we had to get going at the junkyard to keep up because we had so many trucks. Well, when was the oil changed in this one? When was the oil changed in that one? And when you have, 3 road tractors, 3 rollbacks, and 5 Caterpillars running around, and delivery trucks and all that, it's hard to remember just off the top of your head what got serviced when. And I never got it perfected, but but any notes are better than no notes, and that's 100% for sure.
So written records, you don't have to do this alone. We're talking about that on the Christian Car Guys Show today. When we come back, we've got some updates on the Jesus Labor Love, but most of all, we would love your call so you don't have to walk alone. 866-348-7884. 866-34-TRUTH. So much more. Christian Car Guys Show coming up.
Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus? Or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence? Or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine.
I can only imagine. We went to see that last night. We were talking about that today on the Christian Car Guy Show. You were not alone. And because Bart had a record of that, a written record, it led in a lot of ways to him writing that song, which is a fabulous movie. It's a lot about him and his father, and I can't recommend it high enough.
I've seen that song signed.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. It was just absolutely beautiful to see that in sign language.
Well, we were talking about written records on your car as well, but we also want to tell you don't have to go it alone. So if you have that question this morning, 866-348-7884 is a number to call in with your any question or comment. Maybe you got something in your life where you thought you were alone and all of a sudden you realized, hey, and maybe you have it written down in a journal or something, but I just think, how precious is it that God came to Bart through a Christian counselor in a camp when he was 10 years old and said, here, start writing things down. And he wrote down things that led to all this later inspiration. Well, before the break, I was talking about my journal, which I went back and grabbed out this morning early and started looking at it. And I was telling the story. I confused Bob a little, so I don't want to confuse anybody. If I was terribly afraid of the dark before I got cancer. It was just, one of those things, 6'5", 250 pounds, but a chicken. And
big chicken.
God had been working with me for a while to help me get over that, which essentially he said one night to me, Robbie, what's the worst thing that could happen? And I said, well, somebody could come in here with a knife and, kill me. And Jesus said, well, what would be so bad about that? And through that discussion, I came to realize, wait a minute, if I died, I get to be with Jesus. I mean,
boom,
right?
Boom.
What are you threatening me with Jesus? I mean, so why are you afraid of the dark, Robbie? Because the worst thing that can happen is you're going to be with me for real. I can only imagine you get the picture. Well, I'd been working on that for a couple of years by the time I started writing in this journal. I started writing in the journal right before I got diagnosed with cancer. And the thing I don't want to miss is the intimacy of God coming to me and talking to me. I wasn't alone. And that night, the very night before I got the worst part of my diagnosis, Jesus laid a check on my pillow. Now, Bob wanted to know, was that a
just needed a little clarity.
Bank of the Carolinas check, or was that Wells Fargo? What? It was a dream check. In other words, I was envisioning a check that was there on the pillow. When I looked over, there was a check as far as I could see, but the check was a symbol of something else. And Jesus was saying, Robbie,
paid in full.
You're bought. You're done. You don't have to worry. You're not in this alone, and you are going to be okay. And it was an interesting time in my life, but because I have it documented now, I can see the timing. At the time, it may have seemed like, a long time between seeing the check and getting the diagnosis. But now when I look back at the journal entries, I can go, wow, this happened here and this happened here. And it's just amazing to me how I'd just totally forgotten it. I mean, it wasn't even, I looked at that and I was like, that happened? I wrote it down. It's right there. And there you go, Bob.
Erased from the memory bank.
But I imagine that in your own life, right? You're standing there, your building's on fire. You remember that?
Brother, I was definitely not alone that day. It just rings the bell so loud. And the presence we felt that day. Many people have heard me talk about it before, but just the strength that we felt, and there was never a moment when we thought, well, in my head, everybody else was wondering, what we're going to do, or is this it? And I never, ever, ever considered that was it. That fire had burnt my place, and the only thing I could say was, hey, we're going to open up tomorrow. They had a camera in my face and a microphone in my hand, and we're going to open up tomorrow. Don't know what, how we're going to do it, but we're going to open up tomorrow. And we did, and, continued to do so from there on after.
Right, and isn't it interesting how, to me, when I think about your life, Bob, that, God came to me in an airplane and told me to start writing. And unfortunately, I was obedient and I had that. But in your case, he gave you a really neat record of something that right around Christmas time, a few years ago, you got sick and your son came on the show. And as it was, we have an audio record, right?
Exactly.
Even better.
Exactly.
Of Rob's testimony of what he said that day, how God was working with him. And, just like I have this, which is a treasure, we have an audio treasure. A few precious moments, by the way, if you go to the podcast page at christiancockeyed.com, it's a few precious moments with Rob Young where he testifies as to what, he saw a few days, 2 weeks before?
2 weeks before he died. And we were talking about that the other day because he died on 109. My business is 109. But January the 1st, I had bought my partner out to start, giving pieces of the business to Rob as his performance and behavior merited such. And then 9 days later, he was gone. 2 weeks before he died, he was on the show in my absence, and just gave a great testimony about an incident he had out in one of the trucks, and that the turbo had blown up, and smoke everywhere, and fire trucks, and total chaos, and he just related that to his life before he found Christ, and
he wasn't alone.
He was not alone.
And it was obvious when you heard him talking about it that he had been with God, and there was a record for all of us to say, well, he had that relationship with Christ. How has God done that for you? Or maybe you've got something you want to ask us about with your car. We're going to give you an update on the Jesus Labor Love. A lot more Christian Car Guy Show coming up. You call us, 866-348-7884. You'll never walk alone today on the Christian Car Guy.
I can sing just like that. Oh, you've heard me. That's an awesome singer there. That is pretty awesome.
It is. And the idea being, just because you have to do it by yourself doesn't mean you have to do it alone. And so the idea being not just through life, obviously, and we're talking about that in a lot of different ways, but also, when it comes to sitting there going, how am I going to get this fixed? how am I going to work through this problem with my car? And those kind of things. And so that's why we're here, the Christian Car Guy Show, and we would love to hear from you, 866-348-7884, 866-34-TRUTH. And one of the ways that we are constantly reached, and I'm so grateful for it, is through the Jesus Labor of Love. And that's car repair labor for single moms, widows, families in crisis. And, of course, there's a lot of information on our website about that, the Jesus Labor of Love, how you can get involved. But if you looked yesterday, you would see I posted 2 urgent prayer needs. And so here are some ladies that really feel alone, but praise God they have an opportunity, really. I'm saying praise God that they have an opportunity to reach out through our website and to fill out an application. And this one particularly that came out of Raleigh broke my heart, and I'm going to read it because it illustrates a tremendous point here. A lot of different points, actually. But it says, I need a car. The car I had needed repair. Was going to have my dad look at it, but I got a chance to get a professional to look at it. I needed a radiator and a catalytic converter and a coil pack to fix it. I just only had the money for the radiator and the coil pack. So I got the money and paid it. It wasn't much, but I thought he would charge on top of that. But always I was excited to know I was back in business and I could go back to work. And after he fixed it, I started driving the car, went to get gas, and smoke started to come out from under the hood. The car started to shake, and at this time, the mechanic guy, and I called the mechanic guy, and he said he was going to come after he ran some errands and all this stuff and come help me. Well, hours passed, still no mechanic. He texted me later that night that he'll come in the morning. Still no mechanic guy. Next morning, I'll make a very long story short. This guy never comes to help her. And so she takes it to the Nissan store, and they tell her that she's blown the head gasket and that the engine needs to be gone through, which is way more expensive than it would be to replace the car. And so here she is. She's still making payments on this car. And she says, I'm without a car. I'm a mother of a 4-year-old autistic son. He's going to be 5 in a week. He goes to therapy appointments every week. And she has no car.
Well, it sounds like the head gasket was the issue that blew out the radiator to begin with.
It's possible. But the bottom line was that, unfortunately, when the Nissan store looked at it, it turned out that the lower radiator hose had not been reattached. And so when she took out that morning, all the coolant ran out of the car, and the Nissan store pointed out that the reason that the car actually blew a head gasket right then and there was because the lower radiator hose hadn't been attached.
Wow.
So here's what happens, and as it turns out, this particular mechanic is a mechanic in a Toyota shop, so he works for a dealer, but he didn't repair it through the dealership. See, this was out of his garage. And as I told her, and here's the trick, it's a difficult situation, is when you get somebody like that to work on your car and they don't have a sign out front and they don't have a business, that means they don't have liability insurance. You see, if anybody else had worked on that car, Bob, if you and I had worked on that car and it was in our shop, we have product liability insurance that would pay to replace that motor, because when you don't when you don't hook up the lower radiator hose, you're obviously at fault for the reason that this car blew up, right?
Absolutely. I mean,
yeah, but she has no recourse because he's got no insurance. And, of course, he's not going to take responsibility. So she could sue, but, that's not anything I'm going to advise as a Christian to go sue somebody. But you see the difficult situation, and here she is sometimes when we cut corners thinking, well, this guy's going to help me out. Before you pay somebody to help you out, do you have insurance? Can you cover this in case there's a problem? Those are all things that we all can learn from, but also it's a tremendous prayer request for us that we need somebody in the Raleigh area to donate a car. This lady desperately needs a car. She's obviously making payments on this car that's broken, and she's just out of car. So we're not talking about a brand new car to donate, but you got this car sitting out there somewhere that you're not using. It's a pretty decent car. Consider going to ChristianCarGuy.com and donating that car. And along those same lines, we also have a lady, a widow. She's sweet old lady in Des Moines, Iowa. So we're in that area too. We need a car. She similar situation, blown head gasket, turned out crack in the block on a Ford Escape, and she's totally without a car, and she lives out in a rural area. So if you're in the Des Moines area and you know of somebody that has a car, we're in the same need there, where you can go to the Jesus Labor Love, and there it shows you how to donate a car. It's a 501c3, so it's completely tax deductible. Help you out on your taxes next year. I know April 15th is coming this year, too late for last year, but we still got this year. Or, of course, if you just want to donate to the Jesus Labor Love, we had literally dozens of other applications last week that I could talk about.
And there are lots of tax benefits to donating a car.
Yeah, there are.
Lots of benefits.
Yeah, and we have Jerry is in Huntersville, North Carolina. Jerry, you're on the Christian Car Guy Show. Good morning, Jerry.
I'm a senior, and I'm living alone, a widow, and I have 60,000 miles on my 2011 Ford Edge. A couple of those years, 2 of those years, I guess, before my husband passed away, we were in Canada, so we had, 4 tires that we used quite a few months of studded tires. But anyway, I need tires, so I have the original Michelin on there. I'm not sure where to go, to look for them. I did stop at Canso Ford, not Canso, it's Canada, to our local Ford dealer just to get an idea. So I don't know how good of a tire. I want a good tire because I do maybe 75 miles a week, something like that, maybe 100. So what's your suggestion?
Well, like a lot of things, it's a matter of opinion when it comes to tires. But I will tell you, my father, he is a believer in Michelin, and if you've had good luck with Michelins, and it sounds like you have, it's pretty hard to go wrong if that's affordable for you with a Michelin tire, because they go long mileages, and you get something that was originally meant to be on a Ford like that. That's a really good tire. There's no doubt about it. But there are other brands that are handy. But the nice thing is that's as I'm listening, I'm thinking that's the one your husband picked, and so I would kind of stay with that, wouldn't you, Bob?
I'm from a different school on tires.
Yeah, they're like 300. Through the Ford dealer, they're like about $300 more. And they said that the other names, which they didn't give me a printout on it, so I'm not sure what brands they are.
Would depend.
But they said the others are, compatible or comparable.
Depending on how long you plan on keeping the car, if you think you're going to, possibly have it for another 60,000 miles.
I hope to.
Well, then you can look at your history and see that the Michelins did carry you 60,000 miles, and they would probably do it again. Where if you get a lesser tire, you may end up buying 2 sets to get your 60,000 miles.
Right,
So
right.
it's, see, I was always around me being a salvage yard or junkyard guy. We always had plenty of previously enjoyed tires. And I wasn't opposed to putting them on pretty much anything that I drove. That was, because that was my discount, and but if you can, like you say, the Michelins can carry you further, tend to most of the time, and just basing from your history, if you got 60,000 out of the first set, your driving habits are, conducive to high mileage on tires, and just keep them rotated.
But I would, and again, I'd be happy to do it for you. If you email me, you can go to christiancarguy.com and give me the size, and I can, go to 2 or 3 different sites and shop the price, because, that Ford dealer may be a little more expensive than someplace else that you could get it done there in Charlotte. I don't know without doing that, but I would check 1 or 2 other places, which is pretty easy to do online anymore. You can just put in the kind of car and it figures it for you, Jerry.
But I know they give you every oil change, and I keep up with that. Free.
Oh, that's part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we got to go to a break, Jerry. I'm sorry, but thank you for calling. God bless.
To me. All right.
Good luck
Thank
with
you
that.
so much.
All right.
I didn't know where to go for it. That's my problem. All right. Thank you. Have a great day.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye-bye. All right, more Christian Car Guy Show coming up. Stay tuned.
I know you care.
More of Bart Millard with Mercy Me.
Ooh-wee, it gives me cold chills. He sings just like me.
But we're talking today, and clearly you can see that his career has continued to know that he's not alone. I think that song is just genius. But anyway,
and powerful.
Just because you have to do it by yourself doesn't mean you have to do it alone. Today on the Christian Car Guy Show, we would love to hear your situation, like we just heard from Jerry and Charlotte, which, by the way, during the break, I had a chance to look up a few things. And Bob and I were discussing it. You know, it's nice that the Ford dealer's taking care of Jerry, and it's nice that he's doing her oil change and undoubtedly keeping up with her maintenance. But as a second alternative, just to get a price to see how much Ford dealers charging you versus somebody else, I looked it up, and there are several NTB, National Tire and Batteries there in Charlotte, which carry Michelin tires, and I've had really good luck with them, with the Jesus Labor Love and other people that I've had go over there. That might be a good place just to get a second opinion on what the tires would be for your car, Jerry. It's NTB there, but we got
shopping is key.
Yeah, we got Rubus is in Charlotte. Rubus, you're on the Christian Car Guy Show. Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Did I get your name right?
Yes, you do.
Oh, that's for one brief shining moment.
Ding.
There was Camelot.
There we go.
What you got for us?
I got a 2013 BMW. I was trying to change I changed my brakes, and I went to AutoZone. I purchased like a cheap brakes.
Uh-huh.
After I changed them, I noticed every time I step on the brakes, it's making a click, like a click sound. So I'm not sure if is that like a brake issue, or is it? Yeah, I'm not really sure what that is.
Well, usually when you hear a click in the wheel area of a car, how many miles are on it?
106.
Okay.
I want to advise you first thing to make sure you got the wheels back on tight. I was visiting with a gentleman last weekend, and he had just bought a vehicle from a guy, and he's a guy that gets vehicles and sells them pretty quick, and he got it cheap and sold it and just made a little money and didn't even check. And the guy stopped and called him. He says, "Hey, only thing wrong with this was the wheel was not on tight. The lug nuts were not on tight, and it was making a clicking sound." And he was thinking, it was either a universal joint or the rear end, and it was something as simple as the wheel was not put back on tight.
Yeah, because sometimes the wheel, where the hub comes in, it gets a little crooked there, and it's pretty easy to do that where the wheel isn't on tight. So that's a really good thing to jack it up and make sure that the wheel's tight.
A place to start anyway, just to be sure.
And then the CV joints is another place where it might click, or the wheel bearing. All, pretty easy to grab hold of the axle that is behind the wheel there and just pull on it some to see if you got some play, and you'll feel the click. Or if you turn the wheel and it clicks worse and the wheel is tight, like Bob said, then there's a pretty likely chance that it is the CV joint.
CV joint. Okay. Yeah, it seems that, it's my only question that I had. I want to do it by myself, but I'm not really sure. I don't want to mess up anything. So I would probably go.
Yeah, that's one of those that I'm like you. I would make sure that your lug nuts are all tight, which is pretty easy to do. And once you've done that, and if you're hearing that clicking, especially when you turn the wheel, you can actually at most oil change places or whatever could check something like that for you, Rubus, without a problem.
And this is a front wheel drive BMW, correct?
Yes, it's coming from the front.
Okay.
All right, buddy. God bless. Thank you for calling in.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
You have a great one.
All right, 866. We still could take another call or two. We got a minute. We would love to hear from you.
I liked it.
348-7884. You like, wasn't it?
I'm happy that I actually had some experience there, just from the other day. Because if it gets much further than that, it kind of gets erased, and because I don't take notes.
I can tell you that I have. We were talking earlier about the importance of having product liability insurance.
Absolutely.
Well, that's one place that as a garage owner, we paid off a number of claims where the technician would get the wheel crooked and not get the wheel back on, and the people would be going down the road and seeing their wheel follow because they come off.
Hey, my wheel just passed me.
Fortunately, nobody was ever hurt. But I've known of 2 or 3 cars, and this is with a technician that knows what he's doing. Getting that thing on crooked and not getting it tight, and then it wobbles off, and that's dangerous.
And some vehicles have that thing that's like a dowel pin on the 8-lug wheels,
right?
That has to be in the right position, and that's just a problem. That sometimes you want to overthink it and think bigger problem, when it's actually just a small problem to begin with, but that's going to grow with time.
And it's never harmful to get a second opinion, and that's the part of, as we've been saying all the way through the show, even though you're by yourself, it does not mean you have to do it alone. And this is an interesting point that I would say that for me, I got a great deal out of the, I Can Only Imagine movie, in seeing that journal and realizing how God had shown me through this journal. And I actually have now dozens of them, because I keep them, and time again I find that it's amazing the memories that have been robbed from me, the prayers that I've prayed for things that I'd forgotten that I prayed for, and things that are cherished are there because we keep a written record. And so, keeping a written record of those intimate times with God and things that he came through for you, or in your case, you got an audio record you got to bear, right, Bob?
There we go. Rob's girlfriend, when he passed, she took part of the radio clip of Rob when Rob was on the show, and it's installed. I don't know exactly the technology they do that with, but I mashed a little bear's hand, and I get to hear my son's voice. And I try not to do it too often because I don't want to wear it out or anything, because I want it to be with me forever. But
he's quoting Isaiah 44, as I recall.
55:12.
55:12. Hey, you know it better than I do, because you know what he was talking about that day, that how the trees were crying out, and he could see, God's hand in what he was doing. And you got it right there on your dresser.
Absolutely, anytime I need to. And it's just something so special, and we think we're carrying this stuff alone, and so many times, we don't realize that if we just, seek some counsel, whether it's calling in at the Christian Car Guy Show about a car problem, or just asking a friend, I've got a friend that recently lost his son, and I reached out to him right away, and I told him right off the bat, I said, you'll be okay for a while, but then you'll see it some really dark times. And when you hit those dark times, please call me, because a friend reached out to me and told me the same thing, and it probably saved my life. So, you're not alone. You're not alone. You may have to do it by yourself, but you don't have to do it alone.
There you go.
Or did I say that
That's
backwards?
why you said perfect. Yeah, that's the deal. Is that, and again, wherever we can keep a record of those things, or keep a record of your repairs, they're all good things. Well, we thank you for listening to the Christian Car Guys Show today, and remember, Jesus walked everywhere he went, got it all done in 33 years, and this week, wow, just try to remember, reach out and talk to him.